Awesome. First, I'd like to thank you guys for being here and covering our program. Obviously, there's a ton of excitement. It's that time of year. We're getting closer to our tip time. But I think as a coach, it's also that time of year where you're fully aware that you're still a work in progress, trying to get better every day and trying to just do something every single day on the court, off the court, to just impact the growth of our student athletes. The WBI is well past us. Obviously, it's a great foundation and a great building block for our program, but every season is a different season. And this is a new year, this is a new team, and it presented with our own new challenges. But like I said, we're really committed with just our growth. I love the fact that we're coaching a veteran team for the first time. We have a lot of data, we have a lot of film, we have a lot of experience that we can build from, we can show them, we can remind them of, and we can continue to grow them into the best student athletes that they can be. But we got a tough schedule. 50% of our games are against postseason opponents, which is where we want to be. The Sun Belt right now has 4 teams in the top 100. This is a league that's very committed, with me kind of spearheading it as a league where we want to get 2 teams into the NCAA tournament. So it's hard to sit here today and say, hey, in the non-conference, we're going to figure out our identity when we've made a commitment as a league to try to get those 2 into the tournament. But our league is very tough. Our non-conference schedule is tough, and we've got to prepare our players to be tougher than that every day. With that, I'll open it up.
Coach, I know the WBI title is, you said, behind you, but there's still a lot of value to that. Can you address how the power of that and being able to have that accomplishment kind of carried you through summer in basketball circles from a recruiting perspective, and then as you bring it back in here, the influence that it has over your program, fans, your players? I mean, that kind of thing has got to have some great carryover. So you want to make the most of it. What are your observations of the strength of that?
Yeah, 365 days ago when I sat here, I can probably tell you that 50% of our roster didn't know what the WBI was. They didn't know that was a postseason tournament. Now they do, so they're aware. And as we get into a postseason, I think now they're more aware of our non-conference, and they know that every game matters. So that's one approach with our team. They know now, hey, if we go to ETSU and maybe drop that, maybe that's why we don't get to a WNIT. Secondly, our fan base. I mean, from the moment we cut down the nets in this building to today, there's that recognition with our program, with our players, with our coaches. Go anywhere and people are like, we're excited for you to get your season started, Coach. We're excited for you to get your season started. And this time of year, we're a football school. There's so much excitement, but to have people genuinely excited, we're walking in the homecoming parade and there are just people calling out our players' names. They identify with them, and I think that's the vision that you sell your team. You sell your team. If you win, they will come, and this community did that. And we hope when we take the court for the first time that those same people will be behind us and be in the stands.
As you look at your current roster, it's impossible to ignore the one name that's gone. Replacing Maddie on the court and then off the court, really kind of 2 different types of challenges. Can you talk about her impact and, how you've challenged the team to pick up what she brought for so long here?
Yeah, I think, number one, I've had to reframe replacing. Maddie, special. On, off the court, special. Those players don't come every year. So the big thing that just try to keep telling our team and telling ourselves is that what she did needs to continue to bleed into what we do every day, because our roster has spent so much time with her. For the fans, I think our community, you see what she did on game day, but what shows up on game day is generally what happens in practice. And what she did from a practice perspective of raising that standard for her teammates is something that, quite honestly, we miss. It's something that we're coaching. It's something that we're having to set as coaches and my assistant coaches as the standard. But our players are well aware. I think the good thing is that our nucleus pretty much played a whole year without her. Last year we didn't have her. There's confidence in that, but it's not just to me about the 30 games you play. It's the 100 practices where you're preparing, you're setting a standard, and you need that energy, you need that blue collar, and you need that every day. So every day we're getting a little bit better, but I've had to reframe it. There's no replacing special. You got to go recruit it and hope you get to coach it again. But last year was a gift.
Speaking of recruiting, can you address, where you feel like the incoming freshmen are? I mean, those kids have got, their heads are swimming. They're learning a lot of basketball. They're also learning to be away from home and be students and all those things. How well do you feel like they're adapting to things, and what do you look for out of that freshman group?
I think our freshman group has done an outstanding job. Nora, she's from Spain, so that's a huge adjustment. She's not only having to adjust to terminology in the court, but in the classroom, just day to day. Every day with her, we're seeing more and more growth with her game. She's coming in along with Jackie. Both freshmen tore their ACL in their senior year. And if you stick around and watch practice, you can't tell that either one of them did it. They're both blue collar. Nora's a perimeter player. She's going to give us minutes in depth. If you see her from behind, you might think Maddie Story's in the gym because she's that, 5'10", strong. Jackie's a post player. The whole plan for Jackie was to bring her in and get her a year of residency behind Bailey Plummer. She's really tough in the paint. She can finish around the rim, runs the floor, and every day they're learning our system. And so those two have been very impactful. When we talk about newcomers, KK Porter, also a transfer from Cincinnati. We were lucky enough to get a waiver. She is eligible immediately. So she's another player that is coming in, learning our system that we'll count on to give us depth on the perimeter, but she's getting better every day. And then we have another newcomer, Janae from LaSalle, Janae Sanders, who has a long history with Appalachian, but unfortunately we haven't been able to convince the NCAA to let her play yet.
You talked about the non-conference schedule a little bit and the fact that you're coaching an experienced team for the first time. And I know that non-conference has always been really important to you as far as kind of getting everybody set up for the tough Sun Belt Conference play. But how do you think that changes when you're going to take a very experienced team now into some non-conference scenarios that are going to be hard places to play?
I think it changes from the perspective of when we went over the mountain to go to ETSU last season, our players aren't in the locker room thinking, we got to get this one. This is going to be great for our resume. We want to be a postseason team. They're not thinking that. They're thinking, we won 8 games. We're trying to be better than we were the day before. Whereas now, after the season, in like postseason meetings last year, so many of them said, well, hey, if we didn't, drop that game at Lafayette, or we didn't drop this game, would we have been a WNI team? Like, those questions started coming. So I think the approach of every game is going to be important, is going to be very different this year than it was. Obviously, I think as coaches, our job is to always talk about growth. So we've got to make sure that we keep their heads on, because what you don't want with a veteran team is to have a game at like an Elon and then say, oh, well, now we can't go to the postseason, because there's so much basketball left at that point. So that was kind of what was really neat about last year, is they didn't know. They just knew, hey, we're turning this around. We're going to be better.
You mentioned Little Rock last year, just kind of as, watching them cut down nets and how that kind of, set a course for how the team approached, trying to reach a postseason and stuff like that. And I know you do say one game at a time, but Little Rock has always been one of those that everybody's been chasing, and I know that that's just kind of a program that people look to now. Can you let a team kind of keep an eye or kind of be excited about a potential matchup that's coming in conference play like that? Or, I guess, how do you kind of go about monitoring that in the first place?
My staff's here, but they're going to have to monitor me, because they'll probably tell you there's not a staff meeting that doesn't go by where we're not talking about, this is what we need to do to beat Little Rock. And we felt like after last season, if that's the team to beat, then how we play them is how we need to play every day with that in mind. So they come up a lot. And our kids, we're doing a thing called PGMs with them. And it's called personal growth moments, where we do things in the locker room that we talk about different things. And yesterday we were talking about a failure recovery system, mistake response. And one of the players said, well, that's like Little Rock. they're so stable. Like, they throw the ball out of bounds, they get back on D. And so it's not only starting with us as coaches, it's also something that's in the minds of our players in terms of that's the team that's at the top. How do they conduct themselves? How do they walk? How do they talk? How do they act on the court? And we're aspiring to be excellent.
It's brought up that you have 4 starters returning and that 5th spot is open. Have you figured out who you want there yet? Are you considering a few people? How do you go about trying to figure out who that belongs to?
There are a couple players that are in the mix right now. It's open. I want our roster to be a roster this year where everybody feels like everybody's spot is open so we can compete. I don't know if this is public knowledge to everybody, but we've lost Tiara Wilson for the season, and she was that person that we were looking for to fill that role. And so now it's next man up, and so we're having some battles right now, and we've got a close scrimmage coming up, and I think as a staff we'll start to figure out some different rotations. And I've been a coach. I love consistency. I love stability. And I've already kind of said this might be the year where we've got different lineups and we've got different looks and different people challenge different players for different positions.
And with Tiara, if you could, one, just kind of expand on, the injury, like I guess when it happened and kind of what it is if you can. But then also, what made the switch for her role last year such an effective thing for her, because she became a big energy person off the bench, as you've mentioned before, but it really feels like she kind of found a really good spot for a jump shot there. Yeah,
Tiara has the highest character. She went from a starting role to 6-man, and you never asked if a player went down and she got put in the starting lineup, and then she got put back in her 6-man and back in the starting lineup. She did whatever it took for the team. She also embraced going from being our starting point guard to being our playing the 2 and the 3, and just bringing so much energy to our team, just coming in and doing whatever it takes. And watching her right now in handling, she had a season-ending injury. Watching her handle it, again, just speaks to her character and of who she is. I think as a staff, we talk about our failure recovery system with our team. I think when Tiara went down, we took it harder than possibly she did, on the outside, but she's handled every day. We have her timing things during practice and charting things, and she's doing that. In between, she's doing the bike and doing sit-ups, but it's her character. She is unbelievable just in terms of knowing what she wants, going after what she wants, doing what she wants, having a plan, having a vision, and just executing it.
As you come into the season, you mentioned, you've got players back who have developed their games further. You've got some new people coming in who bring some different skill sets to you. Should we expect to see maybe some wrinkles and some different ways of attacking offensively, defensively, or, are you planning to kind of expand what your norm or your ideal would be?
For us, obviously, our offensive system has taken a couple years to build with our transition and just our flow of our offense. We would like to keep some of that the same and not try to tweak it, but I think we want to win, and we want to put our team in the best position to win. So every season, again, if you have injuries, if you have challenges, do we have to slow it down? Do we have to run a quick hitter? Do we have to do things differently? That's a possibility. On the defensive side of the ball, when we talk about, again, to Tiara, when you lose a Maddie, Lucretia Stanley and Maddie Story, what they did on the defensive end doesn't always show up in a stat sheet, but if we were playing 2 superior guards, generally they could shut them down and contain them. And that was just as important as what they were doing on the offensive side of the ball. We're still figuring that piece out. Who's going to be that next lockdown defender for us? Who's going to be able to give that? So will we have to mix in some zone? Will we have to mix in some press and some traps and try to create some turnovers? Those are things like we can't always stay the same as coaches. We're challenging ourselves to be better as well. So I think you'll see the base, you'll see our foundation, you'll see our DNA, but overall we will add some things based upon what we need, and also with an experienced team you can add some layers.
Offensively, you had 6 players last year that averaged within 5 points of one another, so a very, very balanced, not too much pressure on anybody, but obviously there are probably some times when you've got to go to, can you talk about, is that really kind of your vision for your offense? Is that, hey, we're gonna spread this out, everyone's going to be a threat, and on any given night, it's going to be tough to know exactly who you've got to go defend based on who's got the hot hand?
Absolutely. We want to maintain our level of balance as a program. When you bring 4 out of the 6 that you're talking about back, that gives us the opportunity to do that. And I think that's what made us different and unique from the rest of the Sun Belt is we put 5 players on the court that can attack you on the offensive side of the ball. And sometimes, generally, when you are playing some teams, if you don't have to guard somebody or you can, double with somebody, you have a good chance to beat them. With us, I felt like if you want to double Bailey, we all know that she's one of the best passers in the game. She's going to kick it out to somebody that could make a shot for us. So I think that's what made us different. In moving Laney last year from a wing player to a stretch 4 really, really helped us, and it gave us a lot of space to operate.